Okay, we're back again here at the Greatest Sports Channel, and we're still on the NBA. We're moving on to who had the greatest single seasons of all time. And again, similar to Babe Ruth in baseball, Wilt Chamberlain had the sixth highest single seasons of all time. The best season of all time was in 1961 to 62. Um, he averaged 50.4 points per game, 25.7 rebounds per game, and 2.4 assists. And also, the second best season was in 1962-63, 44 points a game, 24 boards, 3 assists. So again, the way I do these rankings is the points, rebounds, assists, and then blocks, steals, and less turnovers if I have those three. In Wilt's case, I don't. Divided by minutes played, and I come up with the amount of activity that is produced within that minute, and his ratio was 1.62 events produced per minute. The second best season was 1.53, and we'll work our way down the list, and you'll see how much better these seasons were than all the other players in history. Um, so then Wilt had other similar seasons, always having 24, 27, 23 rebounds a year, and his points per game went down from the highest was 50 to 44 to 37, 238, and another 37 points per game. So that 6 year run that he had between 1960 and 1965 were just unbelievable. The first non-Wilt Chamberlain best season of all time were the next two, actually. Elgin Baylor, who is the third best player on our all-time list. In 1961-62 also, he averaged 34.8 points per game, 19.8 rebounds, and 5.1 assists. And again, in his instance, I didn't have the block, steals, or turnovers. So we're just going with what we do have. That would only make his numbers higher if we would include those. Wilt had the next best season. So the ninth best season was also a Wilt. And then finally, we had the 10th best season was Lou Alcindor. In 1976-77, with the Lakers, averaged 26 points, 13 boards, 3.9 assists, but his minutes played in that year was down. So the events produced, we did have the blocks and steals also, um, but the events produced productivity per minute was 1.3. So you can see how much lower it was than Wilt, but a lot higher than a lot of other players I'm going to mention here. Let's see. Then we had another Wilt year in 65-66. He averaged 33 points and 24 boards. Then another Alcindor year from uh, actually 76-77. The other year was 75-76. Um, Lou Alcindor averaged 27 points, 16.9 boards. Then the 13th and 14th best years of all time are the second best player that we have on a per minute basis for his entire career, Bob Pettit. In 1960 to 61, averaged 27.9 points and 20 boards. And then the next year, averaged 31 points, 18 boards. Then we have two more Alcindor years. His averages were up 31 points, 16 boards, and then the next year, well, actually, it was from the 71-72 year. Um, he averaged 34.8 points and 16.6 rebounds, um, but the minutes were up. So on the what he's produced per minute was a little bit lower than the other 2 years that we mentioned. So Alcindor's had 4 years so far. Wilt's had 8. Elgin had 2, and Bob Pettit had 2. 18th best, then there was another Wilt year here from 64-65. Elgin was at 18, where he scored 34 points, 14 boards in 62-63. Then finally a different guy. The 19th best is Walt Bellamy. On the career listing, he was not that high, but his very first season in the league in 61-62, he averaged 31 points and 19 boards. The 20th best season of all time was Bob McAdoo in 74-75, scored 34 points and 14 boards, and Bob McAdoo did rank real high on the all-time listing. We had him as the 8th best player of all time. I can't remember specifically where Walt Bellamy was. Let's see. Then we've got another Alcindor year. 22nd was the first guard, Oscar Robertson, his triple-double year, where he averaged 30 points, 12.5 boards, and 11.4 assists in 61-62. So for the entire season, he averaged a triple-double. That was the 22nd best year. Then we got 2 more Bob Pettits. McAdoo again. McAdoo's year in 73-74 scored 30 points, 15 boards. Then we have another Alcindor. And then another guard for the next 2 years, Michael Jordan, who we have as the 4th best player of all time. In 88-89, he scored 32 points, 8 boards, 8 assists. So it was almost a triple-double for the year. And then 89-90, Jordan again, 33 points, 7 boards, 6 assists. Then we got another Elgin, another Jordan, Alcindor, Jordan. And then here, a guy that's not in the Hall of Fame, George McGinnis, had the 33rd best single season of all time. George McGinnis in 74-75 in the ABA. These were all intermixed. He had 29.8 points, 14 boards, and 6 assists. And it's really amazing that George McGinnis is not in the Hall of Fame. Then we have a Shaquille O'Neal at 34, 29 points, 11 boards from 94-95. And then we have another ABA year, Julius Erving, the 35th best season of all time, averaged 29 points, 11 boards, 5 assists. Then we have another Shaquille, Jordan, Pettit, Bob McAdoo. 40th is Rick Barry. His 1966-67 year in the NBA, played for San Francisco, he averaged 35.6 points, 9.2 assists, or rebounds, and 3.6 assists. Then at 41, we have Bob Lanier, 22 points, 13 boards, 4 assists. His ratio of productivity was 1.18. Then we have another Oscar Robertson, almost had a triple-double again in 60-61. 30 points, 10 boards, 9.7 assists. So he almost had another season with a triple-double. At 43rd is Bill Walton. Interesting, Bill Walton did get in the Hall of Fame. He only scored 6,000 points in his career. McGinnis, I think, had about 12 or 16,000, or he had way, way more points in his career, and he's not in the Hall of Fame. But Bill Walton had the championship year in 76-77, and this is the 43rd best season of all time. 18.6 points, 14.4 rebounds, 3.8 assists, and let's see if I have the minutes played. For his career, he only averaged about 28 minutes a game. I don't have specifically in that season how many minutes he played. Let's see. Then we're on to another Pettit, another Alcindor. Then David Robinson comes in at 46. He was I think, the seventh best player of all time on our other list. In 93-94, he had 29 points, 10 boards, 4.8 assists. Another Shaquille, Jordan, Oscar Robertson, Bob Pettit. Then we have Akeem Olajuwon, who we had at ninth best player of all time at 51, 24 points, 13 boards, 1.8 assists. His absolute ratio of productivity was 1.16 in that year. Then we have a Clyde Lovelet. This was a real surprise. He is the 11th best player of all time on a per minute basis. He is in the Hall of Fame. Was inducted not that long ago. In 59-60, he had 20 points, 10 boards, and 1.9 assists in relatively low minutes. He had 1.16 absolute ratio. And then just moving on down, we have more Shaquille Olajuwon, David Robertson, another Shaquille. Then we have two Larry Bird years, who is the 10th best player of all time. In the 57th spot, 28 boards, 28 points, 10 boards, 6.6 assists. And the next year, again, Bird, 29.9 points, 9.3 rebounds, and 6.1 assists. He typically played a lot of minutes in his career. And then finally, a LeBron James comes in at 60th. We have him as the 12th best player of all time. LeBron James plays a lot of minutes. In 2009-10, he had 29 points, 7 boards, 8.6 assists with an absolute ratio of 1.15. So that is a quick introduction to some of the greatest single seasons of all time in the NBA.